Hey, what's up? It's your old pal, Mr. Cook. We're working on the Unit 7 test review. Now, we worked on the first part, which was just kind of an introduction to functions, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and there's a bunch of parts on number 3. Those can all be found in the 7.1 worksheet in your packet. So now we're going to work on 7.2. 7.2 is going to be the composite function. So what a composite function is, it's just using this little notation of this little circle symbol here, and what it means is that you're plugging a function into another function. Okay, so you're given two functions in each of these different cases, and what this notation means is that you need to plug in 4 to the f function first. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, plug in 4 to f. So here's f, and if I plug in 4, I get 4 minus 5. So that's going to give me negative 1. So negative 1 is my answer, and negative 1 now gets plugged into the g function. So negative 1 is f of 4, we just found that, so plugging in negative 1 to the g function, we get 2 times negative 1 minus 5. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, and negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. So negative 7 is our answer here. Very similarly, we can answer number 5. So we do this part of it first, h of 1. So we find the h function, that's this one, and we're going to plug in 1. So we get 4 times 1 minus 3. 4 minus 3 is 1, so your answer is 1 for this. So that means that 1 gets plugged into the g function. So now we plug in 1 for g, because that's what we got here, 1. So 1 gets plugged into g, so we get 1 to the third power minus 5. 1 to the third power is 1, and 1 minus 5 gives us our answer, which is going to be negative 4. And that's it for number 5 and for number 4. For number 6 and for number 7, we're not plugging in anything particularly easy like a number. We're plugging in an actual entire formula. So what this means is that we're going to take the entire g function, which is t minus 1, and we're going to plug it in to the h function. So the h function is 2 times the t value, so the input value, minus 2. That's the h function in general. And what we're going to do is plug in the entire g function. So the g function is t minus 1. So we plug in t minus 1. Then, you do the whole distributing, combining like terms stuff. So let's see, 2 times t is 2t. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And then we still have that negative 2 that's left over. 2t and then minus 2 minus 2. Negative 2 and negative 2 makes a negative 4 when you add them together. So 2t minus 4 is our answer. And we're not going to get a nice little number like we did for number 4 and number 5 because we're not plugging in a number at the very end. We're leaving it in terms of t. All right, so very similarly, we're going to plug the entire h of x function into the inputs of the g function. So the g function looks like this. It's negative 3 times the input squared minus 4 times the input. So we're just going to put parentheses for those two blank spots. And in its place, we're going to plug in the h function, which is this thing. So that's what's going to go in the parentheses, negative 3x minus 3, negative 3x minus 3. And then we just evaluate the whole thing. So this one's kind of a doozy because we have this negative 3 out front, and then when you have negative 3x minus 3 and you square it, it's the same as taking negative 3x minus 3 and multiplying it times negative 3x minus 3 again. The next part of it's pretty easy because it's negative 4 times all this stuff. You just need to distribute in. Negative 4 times negative 3 is a positive 12, so a positive 12x. Negative 4 times negative 3 is a positive 12, so that turns into a plus 12 at the end. All right, now for this part, what we're going to do is FOIL everything together, or distribute everything together. So just very similar to what we did with number 3c, we're just going to distribute everything in there, or FOIL it. So we get negative 3 times parentheses, and let's see what we get. Negative 3x times negative 3x is a positive 9x squared. Negative 3x times negative 3 is a positive 9x. Negative 3 times negative 3x is another positive 9x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. Then we still have all that other stuff, the plus 12x and the plus 12 over there. Now we have one last thing to do, and that's distribute the 3 in there, and then we can combine like terms. So negative 3 times 9 is going to be negative 27, so negative 27x squared. I'm going to combine these two together real quick. 9x and 9x makes an 18x. And negative 3 times 18 is a negative, what would that be, 54. So negative 54x. And then negative 3 times positive 9 is a negative 27. And then we still have that other stuff that we can add in. So plus 12x and plus 12. Now combine like terms again, and you're all done. There's no more x squareds anywhere in here, so I'm just going to combine, just leave it as is, negative 27x squared. Then I have a negative 54x and a positive 12x. And if I use my calculator on that, negative 54 plus 12 gives me a negative 42, so negative 42x. And then I have a negative 27 and a positive 12. And if I add those together in my calculator, then I end up with a negative 15. So that would be my answer for this composite function. This would definitely be like kind of a challenge problem amongst all of the composite functions, primarily because of this square part of it right over here. Typically, they're going to be more like this, where you can just plug them in. So if you can do this, then you're doing pretty well, okay? Don't worry too much about something like this where there's a bunch of different steps. Focus on this stuff. Okay, so that's it for number 7. Let's see what the back page looks like. So this is more composite functions, but using a table. So this is more stuff from 7.2. And this is the later part of 7.2 where we had looked at the tables and looked at the graphs. But this stuff's pretty easy. If you need a bunch of examples of that, you can always, like, work in 7.2. I should also mention that, like, I made a video for the quiz review, and that covers 7.1 and 7.2, and then the stuff that we're going to see in a little bit, the 7.3 stuff. So if you feel like you need a little bit more practice with 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, don't forget to check out that quiz video as well if you want to. But these problems with the data tables are pretty easy. All you got to do is just kind of like, this is a new, I kind of wish that we had a different format for this, but this is one data table, okay, the F data table. And what I'm going to do for you is put together the G data table from this stuff as well, because we're used to seeing this instead in our data tables where we have an X value and then a G of X, like a separate data table. So that's what I'm going to do for you. So there's our f of x data table, and here's our g of x data table. How many spaces do we need? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So we plug in the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then in the g function, I get back out 0, 4, 3, 2, and 1. There we go. That's a little bit better and closer to stuff that we've seen in previous examples. So I'm going to use those. I'm just going to forget about this for right now. Okay, here we go. So what this is asking us to do is find g of 2 first. So the x values are your inputs, and then the f of x values or the g of x values are your outputs. So if my input for g is 2, so here's the g table. If my input is 2, my output is 3. So this whole thing right here becomes a 3. And then this becomes f of 3. So then we do the outside function. Now we go to the f table, and if our input is 3, what's our output? It's going to be 0. So 0 would be our overall answer for this one. Now this one changes up the notation, but it's still the same meaning. We need to find g of 0 first. So we go to the g table, which is this one. If the input is 0, what's the output? The output is going to be 0 as well. So this whole thing just becomes a 0, and now I've got to do the f of 0. So I go to my f table. My input is 0, my output is 4. So 4 is my answer for this one. So for 0 for the first one, 4 for the next one. And now let's go ahead and work on this one. So this one asks us to find the f of 4 first. So go to the f table. If the input is 4, the output is 5. So that means that we need to now find the f of 5. And if you look on the inputs, it only goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So since there is no 5, we actually can't do this one. So this one has no solution to it because it's not on the table. Okay, so that's it for the stuff from 7.2. So I think this is a good place to stop the video. If you need additional help, go to the 7.2 worksheet. And if you need a little bit more, of the examples worked out, don't forget to check out the quiz review because it does go over some of this stuff as well. Okay, that's it for this video. On to the next one where we'll talk about inverse functions from 7.3.